Welcome to episode 107 of the BCF ORG podcast, The Business of Business. I'm Brian Fisher. In the previous episode, 106, our guest was Heidi Hart, discussing the Corporate Transparency Act. This podcast series is targeted to business owners and C-suite executives. It reflects my 34 years as a business owner and subsequent years as a business mentor and consultant. It focuses on the various subjects and topics to help you run a successful, profitable business. They're approximately 15 minutes long, so you can listen while commuting. Hopefully, you'll find one or two takeaways to implement per episode. Today's episode discusses Investing Playbook with Ed Meek. Based out of Greater Chicagoland, Ed Meek is the founder and CEO of Edge Financial Advisors, which exists to provide you with a sense of confidence, freedom, and hope about your financial future. Ed's passion is to provide holistic financial planning and customized portfolio management solutions that fit the unique life situation of entrepreneurs and give you a plan to achieve the lives you have only dreamt about. After more than a decade as a financial advisor for Fidelity, Ed founded Edge Financial Advisors in 2005 with the goal of working with fewer clients in a much more comprehensive and effective way. Since then, he's built a team who are helping clients thrive financially. Ed has 25 plus years of experience as a CFP and is one of the nation's leading experts in defined benefit plans, an extremely tax-efficient way of helping business owners and their employees save for retirement. He lives in Wheaton, Illinois, with his wife and is a father of 3 adult children, and also co-hosts a video podcast, Ed's Edge, a show for the regular Joe and Jane investor who aspires to live a life of freedom and generosity. Let's welcome Ed Meek. Ed, welcome to the BCF ORG podcast, The Business of Business.
Thanks, Brian. Super appreciate it. I'm really excited to be on your podcast. I've gotten to know your podcast a little bit, and so I feel really honored. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thanks for joining us today, Ed. Ed, I'm always interested in people's stories. What's your background in becoming the founder and CEO of Edge Financial Advisors?
I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I went to school in Chicago at Loyola University, and all I knew was I wanted to be in business. I got out and I wanted to be in sales, and somehow I stumbled into the financial field. And the reason that it got me interested was just helping people with their finances seemed super interesting. The story that got me was the guy who was interviewing me for my first job told me about how he was helping this firefighter save money to put his kid through college. And I thought, wow, man, that's pretty cool. Like, to help people make financial decisions. I didn't grow up with much money. My parents weren't good with money. So I had to kind of learn on my own. So I did that. And the first half of my career, I did that for a company called Fidelity. And it was awesome. And they were super supportive, a big corporation. And I became what's called a certified financial planner while I was there. I've always been pretty good in sales and helping people understand and finding business. So I did that. But I got to a point where working at Fidelity, it just was corporate America and it just wasn't the right fit for me. And so that's how I got started with my own company. I looked around and I realized, you know what I want to do, I think it'd be better if I just went out on my own and had no idea what I was getting into. I mean, I'm a planner, so it took me a year to kind of get it all ready. But that's what happened almost 20 years ago and how I got started.
Well, that fits right into our topic, Investing Playbook. When should business owners and C-suite executives start with their financial planning?
Yesterday. That's when they should, right? So I say that because many times people will come to me and behind the scenes, we talk about this, the other planners and me, and that, when we start helping people, we're super excited. We can help them get on a better path. But many times if they actually come to us earlier, they just don't know what they don't know. Just sometimes there's ignorance, and these people are super smart. And these people are really great in the fields they're in. And sometimes they do a fair amount of reading in this area, but it's just impossible to kind of understand all the layers of financial planning and for someone to come up with an investment playbook, because it's not just the investments that they put the money into. It's all the planning around that. And our goal, just like your goal, everyone's goal, is to have that pot that you're going to live off, that pot of gold, you want that as big as possible. And just investing it right isn't the only way. There's a lot of other things that help, especially taxes. If you as a business owner can grasp and take advantage of all of the different tax strategies as a business owner, it's going to allow you to set aside more. It's going to allow you to avoid more in taxes. It's just very, very important. So I would say immediately, unless you're a do-it-yourselfer, and there's some of those people out there. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, you just go to school, do it all on your own, but very few business owners can afford to do that. And so that's why they would hire someone like myself.
Ed, when a business owner comes into a lot of money fast, whether it's selling their business or through an inheritance, how should they manage and invest that money?
Well, I would say if you know kind of soon enough ahead of time, and I'm talking not just like a week or two ahead of time, but if you kind of know you're going to be selling, like, for example, I have a friend who I've been helping for a while. He's a business owner. He started his own company just before COVID, bad timing, but he actually owns some shares in other companies that he works with. And he now knows he's going to probably monetize these shares in one of the companies next year. And so ahead of time, I've been working with him for the last 2 years on what can we do to get everything set up to minimize the taxes on that sale and also to minimize taxes on some of his cash flow ahead of time. And so all these variables are all connected. And if you actually kind of lay them out correctly ahead of time, it allows you to have more. And so it's not just investing it now. Once you get it, then it's important to know, all right, Brian, you probably experienced this. Many of my clients experience this. When you get that lump sum of money and now it becomes that pot of gold that you're going to live off of, it's very different than when you're accumulating it. And so you want to make sure you set it up and you invest it in a way that kind of fits not just today, but what's it going to look like in 10 years? And the biggest thing that people want to solve for is make sure I just don't want to ever run out. I want to make sure I can feel comfortable knowing and having peace about never running out, having enough, and knowing I don't have to worry about that.
Well, when you sell your business, it's certainly a different life when you're spending money and you don't have income coming in to speak of like you did.
I see this with these people I help. Like, it is a very difficult thing to now all of a sudden turn on that faucet and then be like, what's the best way for me to start taking this money out? It's a very unnerving feeling at first because you don't have control over the income in the same way that you did when you were working, right? When you owned the business, Brian, you knew that you could kind of control things to a certain, assuming the business was healthy to a certain extent, you can kind of control and affect your income and make sure it was steady to it, right? You have to make sure you feel that way and also work with somebody that can make sure they invest it in a way where you can feel comfortable about that and it's not wildly fluctuating all over the place.
Absolutely. We're speaking with Ed Meek, founder and CEO of Ed Financial Advisors. Ed, would you explain your strategy of participating in up markets while minimizing the hits in down markets?
So when someone needs to live off their investments, this becomes actually the most important time on making sure that mix of investments is appropriate. When you're accumulating the money, hopefully people have more allocated into equities and stocks. And the reason is because stocks just generally grow faster than most other investments. And if you own them in a diversified basket, you don't have to worry about like a stock going under and it affecting your retirement plan. But once you get to that point where you're living off your investments, you have to balance both of these appropriately, where you still need growth. Let's say somebody sells their business when they're 60, 65, 70, hopefully, knock on wood, that they're going to live and use that for a long period of time. You have to have enough money in stocks so it keeps growing, so it keeps up pace with inflation, because the income you're taking out now needs to be higher and higher, especially after the last few years with inflation, right? I mean, we all know everything just costs so much more money. So we want to make sure you have the right balance. And I can't tell you, everybody's situation is a little different, but I can tell you ranges. A lot of people we work with kind of have an equal balance between kind of conservative investments that they don't have to worry about fluctuating very much and more aggressive investments. And that means like very diversified. So you're not going to lose all your money from the aggressive, but it's going to fluctuate more with the stock market. And then when you invest in those, the way that we're able to take advantage of that is we have some investments that have some downside protection, meaning even the things that invest in stocks, And it's harder for individual investors to access these, but they are available. But people like us are able to find some of these investments that are tied to the stock market. But if the stock market goes down 10, 20, 30%, you still might not necessarily participate in that. And so it protects you on the downside. And so there's a variety of ways of doing that. That's a separate, that would be a separate podcast of going the ins and outs of that. But then also you want to make sure you just have some money and save things. When the market struggles, people will call us up and say, I'm really worried. Am I going to still be okay? I'm like, whoa, remember, we have half your money in safe and things that aren't even going down with the stock market. Some of them, I'll tell them, you got 15 years, you got 20 years of safe money that will pay you that. So don't worry. Even if the stock market's down, you're going to be okay. So I want to encourage people, make sure you have a plan that's set up so you have these things, because then that takes away that anxiety.
Well, once we've taken care of our personal financial future, a lot of us are concerned for the next generation, for our kids. But what are some effective ways that we can educate our children to set them on a path towards financial independence?
I would say if you're working with a financial advisor, or if you're looking for a financial advisor, one of the questions I would ask them is, do you work with this next generation? Because we have this program in our company where we actually, if we work with somebody and they have children or grandchildren, we actually say part of your relationship with us is to be able to help them out. And so you could certainly, if you're pretty much educated in this area, help them do that. But I also would suggest that you could try to find somebody that could help them as well. But when they're younger, ways of having them learn, like what I used to do with my children, is when they made money, whether it was from us when they were younger or made money, we educate them from an early age, encourage them to look at giving a little bit away to maybe charities, encouraging them to put some of it in savings. Then we help them start investing in a little bit. We're talking small dollar amounts, but it's programming them in a way to understand that you pay yourself first before you start paying, spend it all. And so if you're not so good yourself doing that, then maybe find somebody who could help you do that, like your financial advisor. That's what I would suggest.
Ed, what lessons learned or results have you seen with businesses and individuals that have implemented your recommendations?
I think probably the biggest thing, and this is something that we've strived for, was our tagline is to help people thrive financially. And if you're thriving, you feel pretty good, right? Think about thriving. Like if you're thriving with your physical life, like exercising, you feel pretty good about it. And financially, if you're thriving, then it creates a peace. And so I would say our goal when we work with people and we sit down with them is we tell them, we're trying to help you thrive financially, and we're trying to create this peace around your situation. If you implement and do the things that we're talking about, assuming we don't get like Armageddon someday. And that's what I tell people. Like if the markets in our economy over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years somewhat act like they have historically over the last 50 to 100 years, this plan will work. And we can give you really good guidelines on, we know you could spend this much money. We know you could put this much towards vacations, and you're going to be in good shape. And so a lot of times people sometimes will come in, one time I'll do it with one spouse and the other one will come in and they have a lot of anxiety because maybe the markets were down or they needed extra money. And then I encourage them and talk to them and say, hey, you're in still great shape. Here's why. And then I'll ask them afterwards, I can kind of see their shoulders feel more relaxed. And that's really what our goal is. And what I think we're effective at helping people understand and do is feel at peace about their situation.
We're speaking with Ed Meek, founder and CEO of Edge Financial Advisors. Ed, is there anything I haven't asked that you'd like to add?
The only thing I would say in addition to what we said is just coupled with that is to have a plan. Work, if you don't do this all on your own, work with someone. I encourage probably to be a certified financial planner because they're trained to help you holistically look in all the areas. Because it's, again, not just investing. It's tax planning, it's risk management, it's investment planning, it's estate planning. It's all of these key areas. And so have a plan, work with somebody or do it on your own where you make sure you have a plan that covers all of these areas and do it sooner rather than later. I mean, sometimes when people come to us early, we're able to actually help them retire sometimes 1, 2, 3 years earlier than they could have if they would have kept on the same path. So that's what I would say.
How can people get in contact with you, Ed?
Our website is edgfa.com. So you'll be able to see my email address is ed@edgefa.com. And then I also have a podcast myself that's called Ed's Edge. It's right on the website there. I actually have like almost 50 podcasts on a lot of the different topics that we discussed today, plus some other ones that people randomly are always interested in that kind of explain, financial planning more in detail and various types of other things.
Ed, thank you for joining us today on the BCF ORG podcast, The Business of Business.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate it.
My sincere thanks to Ed Meek for joining us today. Managing the performance of your company is one of the most important things you can do as a leader. This podcast is on YouTube and over 20 podcast directories. In search, type BCF ORG. Be sure to leave a space between BCF and ORG. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow the podcast. If you'd like to reach out to me for business mentoring or consulting, schedule a speaking engagement, ask questions, make comments, suggest ideas, or potentially be a guest like Ed, please go to bcforg.com. There's a red Contact Us button in the middle of the homepage. A LinkedIn symbol's on the upper right. Click on that if you'd like to see my profile. All the podcasts are available by clicking on the website podcast page in the reference bar. These podcasts will be released the first and third Tuesday each month. In the next episode, 108, our guest will be Abby F. Large, discussing having your financial house in order. In business, running a successful, profitable business is the ultimate scorecard. You are never done and can always be better. It tends to be more fun than work, frustrating at times, but can be very rewarding. And don't underestimate the value of a business plan and financial planning. From BCF ORG Corp., I'm Brian Fisher, wishing you the best. Thanks.